And welcome to the, excuse me, let me get this. Good afternoon and welcome to the Spalding County Board of Commissioners work session. It is Monday, April 1st, 2024 at 3 p.m. I would request that everybody please silence your cell phones and all other electronic devices. This time I'd like to ask the county manager, Dr. Ledbetter, to lead us in the invocation, and then Commissioner Johnson to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Good afternoon. Let us pray. Father God, thank you for this time together. Thank you for the opportunity to do the county's business. We pray, Lord, that you would lead, guide, and direct us as we make the decisions that you would have us make for the betterment of our community. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. If you would please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to everybody. This is a workshop. There will be no votes taken. This is an opportunity to us for the commissioners to understand specific issues that the county manager wants to bring forward. We will vote on them either tonight or sometime in the future. All right, item number 4, agenda items. Discuss upgrade of the 911 radio system. Mike and Dr. Ledbetter, if you two would lead us through this.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike. Yes, sir. We bought a radio system from Harris Corporation and with the 2008 SPLOST money. And with it came an upgrade in 2013 called Phase 2. And I don't know if all of y'all have read my summary or not, but it came with 2 redundant cores that could run the whole radio system. And in 2021, one of those computer cores, it's a piece of equipment with computers and switches, and it just failed. It had an electronic failure and it could not be repaired. And in 2023, that decision was made by the Harris Corporation that it couldn't be a warranty item anymore and it was end of life. And so we've gotten pricing to upgrade our radio system core so we can have redundant cores in 2 locations for emergencies. And the price includes new 911 consoles. Because the age of those computers, you have to do both. One would not be compatible with the other.
There's another challenge as well. If you would, maybe you and Rico could share with the BOC in our community one of the latest opportunities we had where the system completely failed and was in recovery mode for almost 47 minutes before it restored.
Correct. That happened on March 7th at about approximately 11 in the morning, and all radio communications were completely lost for approximately 5 to 10 minutes due to a maintenance technician error on our remaining core. They turned it off. All right. We did not have a secondary core that could pick up where that one left off, and so we were without communications for approximately 10 minutes. And while the one core we had remaining completed booting up and synchronizing with the GPS and all those details, the 911 consoles were out for
911 consoles were out approximately over an hour, although it was stated as approximately 45 minutes. We were actually out of commission on the actual consoles for reboot and reconfiguration of certain consoles on the radio systems for the technicians to get there and reboot them and reconfigure some of the systems. We were out of service for approximately an hour on our consoles.
So the powering down of the remaining core, we would have all lost communications for a very short time with a secondary core. But ours had been end of life and we didn't have one, and we've been working without that safety net for a couple of years now. And this event and the recent pricing we've gotten from the Harris Corporation to upgrade everything as a single piece, 2 cores, 6 consoles, everything up to current safety, security, and computer standards. And that's the presentation we have for you. Their named price for that was $798,000. That's turnkey, white glove, but then again, they did turn the first one off, so.
Okey dokey. It doesn't sound like too long until you're on the other end of the 911 and saying, I have a problem, and
Yes.
nothing's there. Pretty serious business from our standpoint. All right, questions from the commissioners?
A comment, I mean, this just opens up all kinds of other issues. You know, we say 798 is nothing compared to the grand scheme of things of what could happen, you know, in the worst case scenario. And if we didn't respond, what that would mean for us legally, on all levels. So really, the 798, 290, although it's a lot, really isn't at the end of the day.
Oh,
something
that's
we have
not
to
what
do.
I was gonna say.
Something we have to do.
Yeah, I'm concerned because either in the 2016 SPLOST or one after that, there was funding for redoing something computer at the 911 center. So somebody remind me of what that was.
2016 SPLOST were dedicated towards phone systems as well as the CAD system. So the radio systems weren't included in that.
So did we update the phones and the CAD based on the redundancy that we thought was supposed to be in the radio system? Because they're supposed to network with they're supposed to interface with each other, right?
Correct.
So if we were already on a broken system as far as our radios are concerned, we spent however much millions of dollars to do what we needed to do for CAD and the phone system there. Didn't we know we were broken over here?
It wasn't broken at that time. This system, we've had, our secondary core has only been down from 2023, it was declared end of life. Prior to that, it was broken, but it was expected and attempted to be repaired and could not. And the corporation declared it end of life, which is a version of Uncle, and it couldn't be repaired, and we were just without one.
So in the arrangement for maintenance that we have for them, what does it talk, what does that arrangement talk about in terms of defining what end of life is and what our options are? Because it could be broken at 12 years to the point of not being fixed. Would it be end of life then? And if it were end of life, what in our contract talks about what happens if it hits the end of life before the estimated time that they're supposed to hit end of life?
The contract language, I'm not 100% sure of, but it didn't run out of time. It broke, and the people that made it didn't exist, couldn't make another one. Every attempt was made to repair and replace the broken core components. And when they realized they couldn't, based on the age of them from 2013, so a 10-year-old computer, it's hard to replace pieces to match and also keep compatibility with current and then future pieces of computer equipment. So it was a unique item, and there were no ways that Harris could find to replace it. It wasn't really a time limit, more than an effort that could not be fulfilled.
Okay, so is Harris the company that we've been dealing with since we got the radios? Because I
Correct.
think that the radios were bought from Tyler,
Tyco,
Harris,
Maycom, or Maycom then Harris. It's the same entity.
just
passing-
different owners.
Right.
So my concern would be that whatever it is that you're saying that we need to purchase at approximately $800,000, is that going to continually be able to interface with what it is that they have at 911 now? And is this something that we just need to look at holistically? Do we need to look at if this system is working for us? Is it gonna meet our needs in 2 years? I know when we got the first system, it was like, you only got these 2 bands you can operate on, and then 2 more years, you'll have another band, and this band won't be here. I think that whole discussion needs to happen. I just hate to think of spending, you know, $750,000 when we really need something different. The technology, I'm sure, is much different than it was when we first purchased these systems. So I would just feel more comfortable myself being able to have it explained to us in a way that we understand that this is not only gonna hold up what you have now. I'm not even addressing what are we gonna do if it breaks tomorrow. I'm just saying that, not that your investigation hasn't, come up with an answer, but maybe we should be looking at the bigger picture of how to replace those parts. The other thing was that when we initially talked about having this system, and of course you guys weren't here, we talked about the fact that we had counties around us at that time, Lamar, Pike, maybe even Butts. We were supposed to be able to interface with them, so that if there was a loss of redundancy here, we were able to still have it bounce off of someplace else, or to be able to, and I don't know that we've ever done that. But certainly this is an opportunity to look at what will that look like regionally, so that if we're broken here, the ability for them to be able to help uphold what it is, instead of, you know, your department being down an hour, those calls could have been sent to another system. Y'all are looking at me like deer in the headlight. Am I saying stuff that don't make
No.
sense?
The holistic approach involves separate pieces.
I get that. But if we had had a holistic approach here, we wouldn't have had 1 hour. And understand, I'm not blaming either one of you. I'm just saying, had we been looking at this system holistically all along, instead of us having no way to communicate, there would have been some redundancy for us surrounding us regionally. That would have been a help to us, and us for them as well. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this. I don't know that it's not going to require, I just think that $795,000 is a lot for a quick fix when we're on a system that's pretty much, you know, on a walker, and we're trying to hook that up to a 6-year-old kid, which is a CAD system at 911.
So I'm gonna piggyback on that. So if 800,000 is the quick fix, because we know we need to have something done now, I think this is serious here. We could, I know we talked about it, don't want to get too deep into it right now. When we maybe introduce another SPLOST, if that comes up, we could actually put something on a SPLOST, right? It is public safety.
You could put something on a SPLOST. Back to what Mike and Rico were talking about, Fayette County is on a Motorola system.
Correct.
So they are running into some of the same challenges. Rico, how many times have we set second seat for Fayette County just in the last year?
4 times last year.
So we have run backup for Fayette County 4 times in the last year.
But who's run back up for us?
Actually, nobody. We have not been down
We haven't
for
been down any extensive
any
time.
amount of time other than
But
when
the
we
fact
were
that we don't
that 1
know
hour.
who would back
we
us
got it.
up is a problem for me.
That's the truth.
We do have agreements with Fayette County
Fayette
and with
County
Butts
as well,
County
Butts County.
to run backup for us, but we've not had to do that. Our system has been operating quite well. And the way that the system is designed, it works quite well for us. We're just at the end of life cycle for the equipment that we currently have.
So
to
you're
get-
telling me that for an hour, someone else fielded calls for us?
No, I'm telling you that for an hour, we didn't have anybody fill that second seat for us because we don't have a second core. There was nothing that would allow for our system to operate in that hour because of that second core. Yes.
But why wouldn't Fayette County or someone else that we have a mutual aid agreement for this, why wouldn't they have been able to pick up those calls? Because an hour is a long time if you're trying to call 911.
Calls for 911 are separate. That's what the telephone system does for us. The telephone system handles the 911 calls. This is the piece that handles the radio. So there's three components. There's the telephone, the CAD system, and the radio. And then the hero that sits there and runs it all is the communicator that runs all three of those pieces. Our telephone system was upgraded, so we've got a good phone system.
That's to receive calls in.
That's to receive, that's
Okay.
correct. The CAD system was upgraded, so we've got a decent CAD system.
To do what? You got an
to-
upgraded phone, you got a CAD system to put it in
And then the
somewhere.
third piece is the radio, which is the communicator dispatching or having a conversation with public safety on the road. So that third piece is what Mike and Rico are talking about, which is the radio system that actually dispatches the calls from the human to the public safety people that are in the field. That's the piece that we're having an issue with right now.
So from where I'm sitting, it doesn't matter which of those three pieces it is. My question is, did we not have somebody who was able to take up the slack for us? Because I don't think that taking up the slack should be just if your phone's not working, or if just your radio's not working, or maybe your CAD is not working. There should be the ability, period, if the system is not working, for someone to take that on for us.
Don't disagree. But even if Fayette County or Butts County had picking up the slack and they were able to dispatch for us, we would still be in the same position that we are today, which is the radio system is still a challenge. It's not working like it should. That's the piece of the three-legged stool that desperately needs attention. Is that fair?
Absolutely. The 911 center was able to take the phone calls. The computer they used to talk on the radio lost its connection. They were working and keeping radio contact with portables at 911, with handheld radios.
Like we used to do.
Yes.
Still
So,
direct.
And on what frequency were you're not on the 800 megahertz
yes,
system doing that?
they're just like a user in the field with their portable radio, but they lost their computer screen and the connectivity to the system. They became a mobile user rather than a dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
They lost capabilities, but not communications.
Okay, so yeah, when I hear shut down for an hour, I think people not able to call in, people
Right.
not able to call out, the system's not being addressed. That's a lot different than
I agree.
we had to use portables. Not that I'm not saying that it's not important, but I'm just saying, I just think that, I got nothing against Harris. I just think if we're 13, 14, 15 years down the road, maybe we might need to look at whether or not that's where we want to go.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk timing. Is this a critical crisis right now? Is this something we could do in September? Is this something we could do next year?
That's a risk
This is all about money, so let's be,
No, it should be all about safety. But, I mean, I understand the money piece, but let's get real here.
It's a risk management question. And if we choose to take this path right this minute, it's 6 to 9 months to get it done, I am told. So those are the facts I can offer, or the information.
So basically this, a cost, as we know, if not decided soon, could change.
Yes, it went
Okay.
up in the month we've been getting this ready.
Well, that's something else to consider in
So-
today's world.
So for this kind of money, why did we not consider a bid, even if it were a quick bid? Or I'm just not good at dispersing this kind of money for this service without knowing if there's somebody else out there who can provide the same thing.
That's actually a great question.
So in 69 months,
Ye-
it's not gonna matter. 2 months is not gonna matter if it's gonna take 69 months for everybody, and we don't know that it's gonna take 69 months if there's somebody else, so.
If we put it out for bid and Harris is not afforded the opportunity to be the contractor for this service, then every radio system that we have for public safety would be a part of that bid because they are all proprietary. So the Motorola system doesn't work with the Harris system, and they run proprietary systems specifically for this reason. So it would be a significant cost increase for us.
But the city of Griffin doesn't have Harris radios. They purchase radios from who?
They bought Motorola portable radios.
They run portable radios. We're talking specifically the main system for
The
what?
infrastructure, the towers, the repeaters, the computers that run it all. You can bring different radios and use our system, but the system itself is self-contained, proprietary, and
To Harris?
yes, they provided the first one and they've continued to provide maintenance. And this would be a continuance of an upgrade path, possibly, even though it's needed and necessary.
But you do ask an excellent question, and we can put it out for bid.
You said we can or cannot?
We
Under-
can.
Yes. And under all circumstances, you're talking about fund balance.
Correct.
This year, next year, it's not a budget issue for us in
We
this
could put
budget.
it in the budget for next year, but it would be our recommendation that we not burden the citizens. We could put it in a SPOS. I think that's a great opportunity for us to use for a SPOS project.
So understanding that this could be a SPOS project, I'm not willing to hinge a SPOS passing and not, I'm not willing to put our emergency communication systems
On a vote.
at risk on a public opinion vote. I'd say that we go ahead, and if we have to bid it, we do what we gotta do. For me, it's who can provide us with this service the quickest and have it be equal to whatever it is that they're talking about. But we are able to, at a later date, come back and say, on this SPOS item, we would like to be able to pay for the radio system. If it passes, fine, we're good. The money can go back into the fund balance or whatever.
Yes, ma'am.
But I don't think that it's, to me, it doesn't make sense for us to hinge this on whether or not a SPOS pass.
I get it.
I think we're gonna have to do it.
I get it. I think we should move on it, but I think historically speaking, that whenever you have public safety on a SPOS, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna pass.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
people see the importance of it. So I know we're waging it, I get it. But, you know, I'm all for making, because it is a safety issue, of making it sooner than later because of the cost. But I think that putting it on a SPOS or something, maybe more of a better technology, whatever to put, is something we could consider. And I think people would probably understand that, knowing the need and what could happen if we didn't, personally.
Now, Mike, the issue that really turned out was human error. This was somebody did the wrong switch, doesn't matter. This was not a meantime failure. This was somebody flipped the wrong switch at the wrong time, started the whole reboots process to be able to do it.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, okay.
With the caveat that there's only one core, and the system is so old that it took a considerable amount of time for it to reboot.
Yes. Second course, that's pretty critical to me.
In a computer system that's not 10 years old.
Okay. Other comments from the commissioners?
When you're saying the computer system, you mean the CAD system?
No, it is the consoles. Yes,
There's three computer systems at each console.
Radio systems separate from the.
I just really wish I understood what it was that y'all were saying, so that I could really be having the same conversation y'all are having. But you can understand with my limited knowledge why
All of us.
I'm asking the questions,
Yes.
because I don't know.
That's why we have workshops. So
And
we
that's
can-
why it's up for a vote tonight, by the way.
But yeah, I mean, I think the whole purpose of the workshop is to talk about, is it something that we need to do now, or do we need to expedite the bid process and let's see what we get back? I mean, if there's nothing that looks like it can be beneficial to us, But we don't have to dilly and dally, but, you know, at this point, 30 days or whatever it is on a bid is not gonna kill us if we already got one foot in the grave.
Okay,
I mean, it sounds like we're circling a drain for some stuff anyway.
okay. Any other comments from the commissioners?
So well, we won't know that until tonight. I guess we'll have to decide on what we're gonna do tonight.
Correct.
With,
Yes, ma'am.
with the other two.
Yes. All right, any
Okay.
other last-minute comments from either one of you, Mike, Rico?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2, Evergreen Pay Study Presentation. There he is.
Mr. Williamson, if you would, please tell us your name and who you represent.
Sure. Hey, how's everybody doing? My name's Rob Williamson, and I get the pleasure of serving as your project manager for this engagement that we've been on. It's a compensation study for the county here. And I'm here today to report on the study findings and some recommendations for the board to consider.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. So, yep. You have to be smarter than the clicker, so I'm sorry about that. All right, here we go. So we're going to go over a little bit of the study process. The slides will take me like 10 minutes to go through. Just want to kind of give you an overview of what got us to this point. And just kind of want to set the stage by saying I'm blessed to have the opportunity to work around the country. Right now, I think I'm in 11 different states with about 40 different engagements. So I'm blessed to work with a lot of different teams. And you've got a heck of a team here. You really do. They challenged us the entire way. They asked a lot of questions and really genuinely want to get to the most defensible product that we can bring forward to you. As I was talking to Commissioner Davis ahead of the meeting, I had an opportunity to serve as an elected county commissioner myself for a time. And I know that by the time decisions get to you, all the easy choices are already gone. And that especially when it comes to choices that involve the amount of money that somebody would bring home to their families, I know that you take that very seriously, as do we. And so we feel as though the staff really helped make this a collaborative process to where we could get to the most defensible recommendations possible. We're going to talk a little bit about the compensation philosophy, what's going on in the overall market today. Then we're going to bring it down to what the compensation review was for your market. And then we've got the money slide, which is, I'm sure, what everybody wants to get to. So we conducted kickoff calls with your project leadership team, Steve, Miles, Kyria, and Erica. All were part of that team. We took an assessment of the current conditions, what's going on with your pay plan right now. Then we established what the market was, what cities, counties we want to compare you to. We collected that data, and then we brought that data back together with the idea that we wanted to give you a fair and competitive pay plan, obviously focusing in on the competitiveness piece, right? I mean, we're doing a compensation study, so we want to see, all right, what are you paying people now? What are the salary ranges that you have now? And how does that compare to the market to give you the best opportunity to compete in probably one of the most competitive and rapidly changing markets since January of 2020, maybe that the country's ever experienced. And so good on you for even deciding to go down this path as leaders and to conduct this study, because I don't think you've had one done since 2014. We've got the cost, and then we brings us to the presentation today. So compensation philosophy, that can differ by organization. It can differ when you just drive over the county line into the neighboring county based on any number of factors. But we tried to approach it from the standpoint with the understanding of your philosophy being that you wanted to be competitive with market. Doesn't mean you want to be the highest paid, don't want to be the lowest paid, you want to be competitive with market. You want to have a plan that is equitable, it's fair, it's flexible, but understanding that you have a responsibility to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. So you want a plan that is fiscally responsible as well, because you've got a lot of competing interests. And when you're having that impromptu town hall at the grocery store and they're talking to you about money, right? You want to be able to tell them that you are responsible with those tax dollars. Open range pay plan, not a step plan. That provides additional flexibility as well. If you have a high performer, somebody that's knocking it out of the park, and you want to move them into their pay range faster and farther because they're a high performer, you shouldn't be limited by a step plan saying, well, we can only move you one step this year. So decide to stick with the open range pay plan. And then how are you going to move employees? Based on tenure and performance. So I threw in a couple slides to kind of talk about the overall compensation outlook from the Department of Labor. And if I extended this graph out to the next quarter, you'd see that the private sector wage growth is starting to decline a little bit now. After its rapid run-up, we all know that there was the world before January 2020 in the labor market, and then everything that's happened since, right? The graph you can see just looks straight up. And so private sector was throwing money at anyone and everyone to try to get them to come work for them, and that significantly impacted the public sector, it seems, around the country. You'd have a job posting that you used to get 30 applicants for, now you get 3, and maybe one of them's qualified. That was happening all over the country. But what we can see is if we look at the private sector as it varies to the public sector, and I added in a benefits line as well, the wage growth lags the private sector, meaning it started its increase after the private sector. But what you see, if I were to extend this graph out one more, the latest report from the Department of Labor, I think you're at 4.2%. Wages are still going up in the public sector. Why is that important to you as a policymaker? It means really that the do-nothing option is off the table for you. If you want to be competitive with market, then the idea of saying we inherited this maybe from previous commissioners or elected boards and we're just going to roll with it, that graph right there should show you that if you're not trying to do something to keep pace with market, then that's when your vacancies go up. That's when turnover goes up. That's when service levels go down, and all of the things that you don't want to see happen as somebody that's representing the folks here at Spalding. If we look at your compensation review, so bringing it back home now, we know what the trends are in the overall market. We selected 16 cities and counties, mostly counties obviously. Of those, 13 provided information back to us. We took 72 of your benchmark classifications, which is consultant speak for jobs, right? Your job titles, we took your jobs and we compared those to market, 72 of them. And we got a very robust and defensible average of 7 matches for each one of those jobs, okay? That means we got 7 data points on average for each one of those jobs. And for those cities, counties that fall outside of the area, we adjusted for cost of living to where we can get more of an apples to apples comparison. These are the market peers. I didn't just roll out of bed one day and decide this is what we're going to go with. We had milestones along the way in this project, so we put forward what our recommendation was. We talked about it with your project leadership team, and ultimately these are the market peers that we settled on for various different reasons. It could be some of them you notice that they're a bordering county of yours. Others, we believe that they are, through employee feedback, you're losing employees to some of these. And some of them would be more appropriate to public safety, for example. Others may be more appropriate to administrative positions. Some may be more appropriate to directors. Some may be more appropriate to Parks and Rec, Public Works. It's meant to be a wide sample from the standpoint of the geographical location. I know we have most of those are in close proximity, but we have some on the high end, some on the low end. But we feel that ultimately this was a very defensible data set on average. And I can talk specifically about some of the impact of some of these market peers. But bottom line, when you look at the list, there's only one that is performing below you. McDonough, on average, was 5.5% below your salaries. And I can tell you that that's not going to be that way for long because they just hired us to do a study for them, and I'm serving as project manager for that engagement. So I would imagine we're going to see increases there as well. But every other one of these market peers has a higher average salary across the board than you do. What does that mean? Well, when we look at the market results, we take those 72 benchmark classifications that we observe to market, and we put them together to create an average. At the survey minimum, overall, as an average, Spalding County is 5% behind market. Okay, Rob, well, who cares? We're 5% behind market. What does that mean? Well, what that means is when you go to post a job, if you're 5% behind market, if the starting salary is 5% behind market, you're probably not going to have a lot of luck filling that job or getting qualified applicants. Where I believe you are particularly vulnerable, though, is when we get to the midpoint. Why is the midpoint important in a salary range? Well, typically by the time an employee would get to the midpoint of a salary range, they've got some tenure. They've worked for you for a little while, or they've got some experience in the industry. They've got some certifications that they should have. They've got the required licensure, education that they should have in their role. And in a competitive labor market, they become very, very desirable employees. And what we have happen is, let's say I'm one of those crew leaders or I'm a supervisor and I'm making 12% less than a neighboring county or city is paying. Why would I want to stay here for 12% less? That's what I mean by, I feel as though the numbers show us, yeah, you're a little vulnerable at your starting salary, but really at that midpoint is where you're most vulnerable. The maximum average, where that's important is when you start talking about succession planning, you start talking about employees that have been here for a minute, and I know you have one employee I think has been here 48 years. You have more than 20 employees that have been here more than 30 years. You have some employees with a lot of tenure, okay? With 568 total employees, it's a good balance, but bottom line, of all of those employees that I've mentioned that have more than 20, 30 years, not one of them's reached the maximum of their range. So when you start looking at how that would compare to market, there's some vulnerability there. Key study considerations. No employees are recommended for a salary decrease as a result of this study. What do I mean by that? Let's say I'm an administrative assistant and I currently make $33,000 a year. And the new market average that we're proposing would have a minimum salary of $34,000. Well, if I'm making 33, we're going to give me a raise at least to bring me to the minimum to 34. If I'm making 35 and I'm already above the new minimum, no adjustments given. But you're not going to bump my salary back to 34,000. That's what I mean by no one gets a salary decrease. It looks like this slide is telling me as advanced that I talked too long. Parity recommendation. When you hear parity, think time. Okay? How much time has somebody spent in their current job title? How much time has somebody spent overall in service to Spalding County? And trying to adjust or try to move employees into their new market competitive pay range based on a blend of this time and experience. Because what's happened for y'all is you've had to fill positions by hiring at the market rate. So when you want to hire a new position in 2022, you couldn't pay the salary that you currently have listed as your employee range. Doesn't work. So let's say I've been working here 5 years and I'm making this amount, and you have to fill a position, we have the same role, you have to fill that position, you might have to hire somebody making the same amount I'm making, even though I've been here 5 years and the other person just walked in the door. That's wage compression. This is what hybrid parity, the model that we're going to show you in a moment, would help to correct. It will move employees and create space that should exist already within their new market competitive pay range. That because you haven't done a compensation study in a while, you're not the only county that needs to do this, right? There's other counties that we work with, most of them, quite frankly, where we've needed to do this. Very collaborative process with your team, and the numbers that you're going to see are not, you need to write a check tonight numbers. These are numbers that are fiscal year numbers. This is the cost that would be incurred throughout the entire year. So our recommendations is that you would adopt the proposed pay plan. It's a compensation study, so we took your structural pay plan, meaning we took your existing numeric pay grades, we took your salary ranges, and we took your existing job titles, and we moved those into a new recommended market competitive position. We then want to reassign those job titles into those pay grades based on the market results without trying to disrupt internal equity. Meaning, if Commissioner Johnson and I already had a 2 pay grade separation between us, and the jobs that we have. We're going to try to maintain that internal equity, and we're not going to have me leapfrog another employee, right? We're going to maintain that internal equity. Selecting an implementation methodology, which is a fancy way of saying we want to give you a tool to move employees into the proposed plan. So here's the money slide. You'll notice 2 options that are listed there. One of them says bring to minimum, the other one says hybrid parity. The bring to minimum cost is included in the hybrid parity cost, okay? Because we believe you've got to bring employees at least to the minimum of their new pay range, no matter what. And then we can use hybrid parity to move them within their pay range to create separation between employees to where we don't have the situation I was mentioning earlier where one employee, like I have an example of an administrative assistant that's been here 21 years, making less than an administrative assistant one that's been there for 7 years. Now that's probably one of the most varied examples, right? But there's examples of that throughout your pay plan. This would be an opportunity to correct that. So the bring to minimum of your 568, 569, Miles is probably thinking, Rob, you're getting the numbers wrong. But somewhere in there, full time, 397, which is a lot, would be needing to get that bring to minimum. So in the example I used before of, let's say I'm making 33,000 and the new range is going to be 34,000. My new pay range you put me into is 34,000. Bring to minimum would say I need to get a $1,000 raise to bring me to the minimum of the new pay range. I'm currently at 33. The new pay range starts at 34. We've got to give me a raise to go from 33 to 34. That's all bring to minimum does. It doesn't solve for wage compression. It doesn't do anything but bring employees into the minimum of their new market competitive pay range. Hybrid parity, I believe, would be transformative for you as a public sector entity. It would take you from a place of being not competitive with the market, quite frankly. I think you're currently looking at around 90 vacancies. So if you were to ask me, Rob, how do you know that we're not competitive to market? Well, if you were competitive to market, you wouldn't have 90 vacancies right now. The market is telling you you're not competitive. So a little bit of vacancies is healthy. That percentage of vacancies, not so much. Hybrid parity would allow you to immediately bring employees to a competitive salary. Keep in mind, this is based on the market average. This isn't at the 60th percentile or the 80th percentile where you'd be paying at the top of the market. This is at the average, okay? It would bring your employees to a market competitive position, and it would space employees out, kind of reset the clock, if you will. It would space employees out based on a combination of how long they've been in their current job and how long they've been here overall in service to Spalding County, regardless of the job that they've been in. So how the methodology works is it gives an employee 100% credit for the time they've been in their current job. And then it gives them partial credit, 25% credit, for any remaining time that they've spent with the county, regardless of the job they've had. It creates a true hybrid approach to move employees into their new pay range. And I think the next slide went backwards in time. Yeah, and the next steps we have is to basically write a book that memorializes everything we've done. We'll give you a draft and final report, and then move to project closeout. And that's the presentation. I'd love to
Go
try to
back
answer any
one
questions you
screen,
might have.
please. Could you go back one screen?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm, hold on, no, it
Keep
was the
going.
next to the last one, next to the last screen.
Here?
I wanted to it was about the parity.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to figure out, when you talk about credit, 25% credit for any remaining time regardless of position, explain that. I don't know what you mean by that.
Sure, and if I get too knee-deep in the weeds here, just tell me to be quiet and we can move on. So basically, when we're talking about giving credit, let's say I've been working here for 12 years. And let's say for 2 of those years, I've been in my current position. All right, so let's say I'm an executive assistant now. I just promoted to executive assistant 2 years ago. So I've been in my current job for 2 years. The previous 10 years before that, I was an administrative assistant, okay? So what we would do is we would credit the 2 years. You get 100% for what you're in, and then I've got 10 years left. We do 25% of the 10 years, right? So I'm really bad at math right now, but I'm saying it's gonna be somewhere around 3 or a little bit less than 3, and we add that to the 2 years, and we get hybrid years. That lets us know that 5.3 years, 5.4 years, that would let us know how many years of a 30-year career we would need to move that employee into. We'd calculate the hybrid years, and then we move them into their new pay range. So if my pay range is 34 to 54, we're gonna move that employee into that new pay range 5 years of a 30-year career, anticipating that for me to go from the 34 salary to the 54 salary, it would take 30 years to go from the minimum of my salary to the maximum of my salary. So the hybrid parity calculation is a way to not pick winners and losers and decide, well, we like this Rob guy, so we're gonna give him more of a raise, but we don't like this Susie person, so we're not gonna give her a raise. It's a consistent methodology across the board that bases that movement or placement into the new pay range based on how long you've been in your current job, as well as how long you've been with Spalding overall.
Yeah, so my concern, not that that is over my head, my concern is that we've had people that worked here a long time and they didn't do anything while they were here. Their supervisors didn't write them up for not doing anything. They got good reviews until they got in trouble. So my concern has always been with using tenure. Now, I get it, I understand how tenure works. But if that tenure is just based on you showing up and coming to work, and your productivity is the pits, how do you justify that when somebody comes in that's brand new and that's rocking it all the way, knocking it out of the box? That is the problem that I have with that nowhere in here does job performance elevate people, or skill sets of elevate people. So.
And I think it's a valid point. And, you know, you've got 2 trains moving down the track here.
Yeah.
One is, for you to be able to recruit and retain talent, you have to be able to pay a competitive wage.
I understand.
The numbers tell us now that's not taking place. So once correcting that, no pay plan is perfect, no implementation is perfect. You could look at somebody's probably not going to be happy no matter which way it goes, right? The person that just got hired that's to fill the position, they're probably paying a market competitive wage, so they might not be recommended for an adjustment, right? But that tenured employee that's been here a long time, some of those employees, maybe they have been good performers, and they have been underpaid for decades. That's
And I'm
another
sure
way to
there
look
are
at it,
some.
right? And so I feel like the other train moving down the track, Commissioner, is a vitally important one that, quite honestly, a lot of folks in your seat don't comment on, and that is we've got to figure out a way to, we want to have a competitive pay plan, so we might give a cost of living adjustment every year to move the pay range up, but now we need a merit or performance-based system to figure out how we can recognize and separate the good performer from the poor performer. And how are we going to move people up and out that aren't getting the job done, and how are we going to reward people that are, to where we can move them within their range.
So, since you said that you kind of went through this with some of our staff, or our staff. So, what is it that our staff is saying about, okay, like when we did our last pay plan, we came up with a policy where, you know, we would try to incentivize people to increase their skill set. So if you're a welder, maybe you became a welder too. If you're just a driver or a detail officer, maybe you became a CDL, or maybe you got trained to be post-certified or weapons certified. You got a master's degree, you got a bachelor's degree. Now, I know everybody's not trying to go to school, but that was just one vehicle that we tried to use to incentivize people so that they can, I think you could get up to 5% increase in your pay. I don't even know how many people use it. I know many of the professional people in administrative, many of them used it and benefited from it. So I think the concept of incentivizing people to do better is going to help the county with those skill sets that they have. So, and I know you say this is hybrid. You know, there's not gonna be an answer for any of that, but for me, the biggest thing is, and I've never seen a plan yet, as long as I have been here, which you probably didn't even have gray hair when I started, has never dealt with compression. Because if we did a significant pay raise, I guess maybe it was in 2016 or 2017.
First half or something.
And we did half of it. Well, they never got the other half because you had a different group of folks sitting up in here. So what I'm saying is what good is it for us to do a plan if somehow we don't lock ourselves into it? Because what we did the last time was stuck a carrot out in front of the employees, and they're waiting for the other piece of it at the end of just the end of the next year, not even years down the road. The next year, they didn't get any of that money.
So
So
you're talking
that
about-
we have multiple things.
You're talking about phasing it in. The
Right.
issue about
It was
phase-
supposed to
We phased
be-
it partly, and then we didn't phase in the rest of it.
We didn't give them the rest of
Okay.
it. And
Well,
so,
and I think what we've learned from that is that now that we're back here again, you know, when we do implement, because we're going to have to do something, we know this, that we have a plan and we stick to it. And we, for a lot of reasons, there's a trust factor out there, I'm sure, and just for us, in good faith, like you said. I want to go back, if you don't mind, to look at those other counties that we're competing with. I've got a few questions on that, and I have to tell you, you know, everything that you're saying really is spot on. I get what you're saying. I mean, all the information you've in here, it's true. You're right. It's correct. The data is a little unnerving, but I think that's just fact. When I'm looking at our market peers, and I'm looking at these other counties, and I see Griffin, what is this based on? Is it based on, because I'm looking at, okay, there's Rockdale County. Now, we know how well Troup County is doing. Is this population? Is this median income? I mean, I'm looking at how can we compare us to a lot of these communities? Some I can see, some I cannot. What information do you actually take in to make this part of our peer group?
Geographical proximity would be one. Feedback from staff, past studies, our understanding of the market, who you're losing people to, trying to get a representative sample. No compensation study's perfect. No set of recommendations is perfect. But what we're trying to get to is the most defensible data set that we can. And, there's one on the list there that stuck out to me that you might think, well, why is South Fulton on there, given the size? Before coming here tonight, I looked at like the police positions, for example. Deputy sheriff, lieutenant, captain, sergeant, some of the ones that were the furthest behind market on average. They averaged about 22% behind market at the minimum, that classification grouping. And I went through the data before the meeting today, and I took out South Fulton and every single one of those. And the differences we're talking about making, and like for lieutenant, it went from 25.8 behind market to 25.3 behind market. You know what I mean? And for captain, it went from 20.3 to 19.5. That was the biggest change because we adjust for cost of living. To your point, as a policymaker, if you would look at this list of 13 that provided data and say, that one shouldn't be on the list because of X, that's a conversation that we could have. And
I don't think that matters at the end of the day.
ultimately, we had to arrive at a list that we felt was the most defensible. And it's also important to know that we did that with your leadership team too. It wasn't Evergreen, the consultant, rolled in and just stay with us and we'll tell you exactly what you need to do. We want to make sure that we had buy-in from your project leadership team. I don't know if Steve wants to weigh in on this, but it was who are we losing people to, geographical location, our experience of the market, and trying to get to the most defensible data set. I hope that answers
You
your
did.
question.
So before you jump in, Steve, I just want to make a point here. Okay, so last meeting, we had the folks from the tax office that were here. And they centered around market value. So you see this, you see where we are here with this. I mean, we've got, we're just below the market where it comes from, of course, our employees and where we are with our millage rate and things like that. So somehow or another, we're gonna have to find ourselves, this is not going away, to make these tough decisions to bring ourselves up to market, one way or the other. We're gonna have to do this, and it's not going away. It's not changing. And if we don't do it now, it's only gonna get worse. So, I mean, that's just the point I'm gonna make. I mean, we just had a meeting on this last week, and it's whether the fair market value, we're below the 8 ball on it.
To
Go
your
ahead,
point there,
Steve.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
when you start talking about cost, a lot of times we get fixated, everybody gets fixated on this number, right? That's the cost. But what's the cost in turnover right now? Where you have your middle management employees to director level employees that are on average 12% behind market. I mean, I have some that are 30% behind market at the minimum, even more at the midpoint. A salaried position to replace it on average is 1.5 times the annual salary that person makes. That's the cost of turnover. For an hourly employee, typically the cost is 50% of their annual salary. So how much is turnover costing you right now? And then the vacancies, how much is that costing you in burnout or continued training of people, bringing them in, all those things, to your point. I think,
Cost.
the reason why you're so far behind market is because of what was mentioned before, that, we only did half of what was implemented. And the market kept moving, you're hiring people higher, you're not moving these folks, it creates compression.
Go back down again.
At some point, you reach an inflection point where you're either going to correct it or things are going to continue to get worse.
All right, let's talk. Rob, I'll make sure I understand. All right, for salary cost, in the end, I'm talking about total pay. How much it's going to cost us out of our money. Cost only is going to be 3.1. But if we put in all the adjustments and everything else that goes along with it, are you saying that it's now going to be $6.3 million to do it?
No. First of all, to your point, this is base salary adjusted for cost of living. So this is base salary cost. This is not total cost. Your team can let you know with benefits and everything what the total cost would be. But the hybrid parity number of 3.1 or 3.2 million there, that's the total cost. That brings all employees to minimum. That includes the cost of bringing all employees to minimum, as well as the cost to move them within their new pay range to take care of your wage compression. That's total cost.
Okay, but I think you mentioned, let me make sure I understand that. That brings everyone to minimum, but if I saw correctly, there's 5% or negative 5% that are not at minimum? Did I hear you say that?
No, that is, the negative 5% that was the market results. So here, when we went out to market and we saw what are your competitors' average ranges compared to
We're below,
yours.
we're at.
You're below. But
Okay.
it's a great question, because what your ranges are and what you're actually paying people, it's not the same thing. You can have pay ranges that are absolutely market competitive, but if you're paying behind the market,
Right.
you're going to have these big increases. And I think that's what you're seeing here. Not only are your pay ranges behind market, but what you're actually paying people is behind market. And that's why the number to fix it, and it only gets more expensive. I mean, it's not one of those things where we can do this next year. Yes, you can, but the market just keeps moving.
Changing. Okay,
And back to your
I
point-
interrupted that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, please forgive me. Back to your point, Rob, these are two separate plans. It's bring to minimum or hybrid. Because
Correct.
bring to minimum is inside of the hybrid cost.
Correct. I usually just put bring to minimum up to let you know this is what it would cost just to get employees to the minimum of their new range. But keep in mind, let's say we have wage compression and Commissioner Taylor and I, I make $1,000 less than you and you've been here 10 years and I've been here a year. Well, if we do bring to minimum and we both get brought to the minimum of our new pay range, the wage compression hasn't changed. It doesn't fix that. The only thing that fixes that is we value your 10 years with hybrid and we move you farther from the 1-year employee. Yeah, good question. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear.
$3.2 million is still $3.2 million.
Well,
agree.
I mean, it would have been $1 million if we had did it 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
2 million last year. You know, this, I'm so hesitant about this because, and I say this because I thought we was here last year. I thought that they were getting their pay raise last year. And so I just don't want to even get all emotional about it because I'm just not sure that 3 people can sit up here on this board and make the decision they need to. That's the first thing. The next thing would be, what would be our step if we decided to go hybrid? What would be our future steps in fighting compression? How would we move forward with that? Are you saying using hybrid parity would help us to continue to move? I'm just not understanding how we would move forward after that and not get back in the same position in 2 years or 3 years. Because clearly a 1 or 2% cost of living increase is not going to make that kind of difference.
Great question. Hybrid parity, what we're talking about here, this is a one-time implementation. This is to reset things to take care of wage compression based on time and experience at the date that you implement it.
Right.
Okay? Moving forward, all the cost of living adjustment, or if you give everyone the same increase, all that does is raise everyone up. So if there was wage compression that existed, it doesn't fix that. So as you move forward, what helps with wage compression is you've got to progress people, you've got to move employees within their pay range. So if we go back to that administrative assistant that makes 34 to 54, right? And I've been here 15 years, so if you're gonna put me at the middle of that range, when we hire somebody new, if we have to hire them in higher than that 34 and closer to this midpoint, well, as long as you're doing performance reviews, you're going to be able to move those employees within their range. So it's the cost of living adjustment goes this way. The performance evaluation merit
That way.
goes this way. But the reality is you should be doing a compensation and classification study every 3 to 5 years and probably put a mechanism in place, and it'll be part of the recommendations that we provide you, that as it relates to cost of living adjustment, link it to some index, a CPI index, 3-year rolling index, to where you don't have to have policymakers voting on this every year. You can budget against it, and your employees can budget for their families as well, knowing that this is what's going to happen based on a certain index. And then the merit piece should be tied to what you as policymakers want to see prioritized. You want to see a certain area prioritized, certain growth prioritized, whatever it might be, then you could prioritize those things and make them part of your performance evaluation process. But the only way to not rewrite back here is employees have to move within their range every year. If they stay static and the market keeps moving, sooner or later, as you hire new people, they're going to get hired at a salary that's closer to a tenured employee.
So if I start working at Leisure Services Administrative Assistant, I've been here this is the pay range, beginning and end. At 1 year, I'm gonna be here. If I stay here for 15 years out of a 30-year, my pay will be here.
You should be at the middle of your range at that point.
Right, and as I get closer to retirement, my pay should
closer to that
significantly be
maximum.
able to meet that.
And if you're moving every year based on performance, then, year
Gap
2,
is
year
fine.
3,
Gap
year
is
4, I'm moving farther into my pay range. Then when we hire a new employee, the chances of you hiring
Getting
that
up behind
employee
them.
at the same rate as that employee that's been here 5, 6, 7 years, it doesn't happen because that employee that's been here is moving every year.
I understand what you're saying. It's gonna take a minute for my brain to understand it, but yes, yeah. That's the answer to one question. The other question is, how do we keep from being in this spot again? How do we push back the compression? Because it's always
3
been
to
a
5
problem.
years. We
Yeah.
gotta do it again have Rob come in 3 to 5 years and say, let's look at it again.
Now, I mean, if this is based on the recommendations of our staff, then I have to, these are the people that it affects. And so clearly their commentary will be based on what their needs are or what they've seen in industry. And I know that we have several people who have been here lots of years who are working way under what they should be, what their peers are getting paid in other industry. Which makes me feel even worse because they're here because they're dedicated to this place, but this place is not loving them back. So, yeah. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you.
This is gonna be tough. This is gonna be a tough decision on how much money we have and where we're putting this money, this time. This
So
is
when
gonna-
we actually have our budget next week,
Yes,
you're going to, part of the things that you're gonna show us with the budget is gonna include this,
yes.
Ma'am.
okay?
So I'll leave this for you two guys. 2 or 3 years ago, the year before the T-Splosh was voted in, this board made a decision to actually start funding road work and public works. And they decided that $1 million from zero money going into $1 million would happen every year. And I think that's important. And I think that people want to ride on roads. They're gonna still fuss about the roads even if they are getting fixed. This is the same thing to me. If we can make a decision that we want to fill potholes, then we need to be able to make a decision that we want to fill folks' bellies. And, I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, this is how people live. This is how they plan their life. This is how they plan their retirement. And if we can't consciously, we can sit up here and say that roads are more important than people. Well, you can have all the money in the world to fix the road, but if don't nobody show up to work, that truck is not gonna drive itself out there. That asphalt bucket is not gonna fill itself up. You call 911, there's not gonna be anybody there to answer the phone if it's working. So I say, it's a challenge, and it has to be a commitment. I've been committed. I just didn't have enough votes. So I'm throwing that on y'all. Y'all do whatever you want to, but you know what we need to do.
Yeah, I think
Whatever happens on the other part of the budget, we need to fix the money part.
Yeah, I think that, it's put up or shut up time. I think I said that last year. I think that, it's time to make our employees a priority. Because I feel like that, I'm sure they probably think that they're not. We could say wonderful things until we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, talk is cheap, okay? Let's just say it, being very frank. So it's time to, make those tough decisions and do the right thing. It's my last year doing this, and I'd like to see it done right.
Okay, anything else for the commissioners to Rob? Rob, thank you, we appreciate, you did, City of Griffin also, didn't you?
Me personally, no.
But your
But
company.
company, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank
We
you for your
appreciate it.
work on it.
We've got
Thank you
some-
very much for the
We've
opportunity.
got some opportunities for us to do some. hard
Absolutely.
thinking.
Right.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Item number 3, discuss metrics for Raise the Bar. So everybody understands, one of the things that we have talked about for a long time is raising the bar in the county, making the county better. It started off in the planning, zoning, construction side of the house to do that. Recently, Newton Galloway, our attorney, came and spoke to us and said, you all need to set up metrics for what this looks like, how we raise the bar for the entire county, and it's not just in hardy plank and 4,000 square foot homes. There's a lot more to it to be able to do that. So with that in mind, I said I'd like to have us have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what this is, and I'd like to have Mr. Newton Galloway talk a little bit about his idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Sylvia and I have had a chance to talk very briefly about this before the meeting, but a lot of this is going to be very informal, and these are going to be based upon, what I'm going to say is going to be based upon generally just views that I have of things to, and how to address this. We've been talking about raising the bar. Most of the times it has been directed to revisions to the zoning ordinance. When we had Zoning 101 a couple of weeks ago, and the folks with Sylvia's office, and Joseph was here, among other departments. And there was a general conclusion at the end, in many ways, that the zoning ordinance probably is not necessarily the most important way to raise the bar. So I thought I would give you just some relatively random thoughts organizing raising the bar, because we have thrown the term out, but we have never defined it, and we have never set parameters or benchmarks for what constitutes raising the bar. So I'm going to start with, today, low-hanging fruit. The stuff that needs to be done, the things that need to be done in order to just generally improve what we have now. One of the problems we have in Spalding County is that developers will come in, and I have learned to assume that they will gravitate to the lowest possible common denominator of development. And what I mean by that is, if there is a way for them to dumb it down, they will find it. And we have seen that in a number of instances. So one of the first things we need to do to raise the bar is to give Sylvia's office sufficient means, both in terms of personnel, funding, to develop policies where they can, and procedures whereby she can monitor to determine that what you have approved and the development on which you have imposed conditions has occurred according and consistent with what you expected to be developed. Okay? For example, I'll give you a couple of examples.
Thank you.
Before I get to that though, a key component to that is code enforcement. Code enforcement at least lets people know that the county has the wherewithal to get them in a position where they have to comply with the code. Let me give you an example now. Wolf Creek on Highway 19 on the road to Zebulon. That is the only piece of property in Spalding County that is zoned R6, which is condominiums. We have a provision in R6 that requires owner occupancy and the development of a condo association out there. 90% of that property is now owned by the housing authority, and it is rented.
90% is owned by the housing authority.
Roughly. It may not be quite that percentage, but it's close.
But how would the housing authority?
When I have no idea how they became the owners. All I know is that we had an inquiry, went to look it up, see who the owners were, recognizing, at least I did, recognize that R6 was supposed to be owner-occupied condominiums. And if you look on your Q Public tax records, you'll see Housing Authority controls the majority of the property out there. And those are obviously rented.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll give you another example. And I'm not gonna, these relatively, I mean, they're all public records, but I'm not gonna go into and name parties to them. We had a code enforcement issue involving property that straddled the property line of the city of Sunnyside and Spalding County. We reached a settlement agreement with that developer because they were in non-compliance with a multitude of things. We've never enforced it.
We didn't have anybody to enforce it.
We have never enforced it. And poor Sylvia, I give her a list I will send her an email and I will warn her, a sleeper from the past.
So I immediately disregard that.
A sleeper from the past. And there are several others that I could walk through with. Another piece of property, which involved magistrate court actions that didn't really ever get enforced, is the problem property in East Griffin that has come back before you recently. Okay? And those are examples. We cannot expect people to come in and build and maintain and build to a quality standard that we want to see if they know that we do not have the capacity or the will, or for whatever reason, to compel them to do what they have represented they will do.
I totally agree.
Now, don't place too much blame on this board, because this has been an endemic problem. And I'll give you an early example. When I first returned to Griffin in 1988 from having practiced in Atlanta, one of the cases I was given was enforcement of the covenants for a development called Runaway Lakes. Runaway Lakes was started. There are about 4 or 5 small lakes out there, some of them decent size, and they had very good covenants. 2,500 square foot minimum conventionally constructed houses. The developer went into bankruptcy. The person that bought it out of bankruptcy dumbed the covenants down and bought out the people who had bought properties subject to those covenants. So those covenants went away. The effect of the first covenants went away, and as a result, you went from a 2,500 square foot conventionally constructed home requirement to a manufactured home of any size. And guess what it got filled up with? Again, it gravitated to the lowest common denominator. So from standpoint of looking at priorities, I would suggest that that is where we start. And Sylvia has worked on an ordinance already that clarifies and identifies the people within her department who will be able to go out and issue citations.
Well, and any, beyond my department even.
Okay? And when we let people know that we desire to improve, then by definition, they're going to have to be able to move forward and bring their facilities into compliance. You know, one of the reasons, and we could go through a number of different uses that we've had that have come up, and many of them have problems. Let's look at how we do subdivisions, for example. Why do we have the complexity of the subdivisions that require special exception approval on top of zoning? Well, here's the reason why. We would get a plat in or propose for rezoning where the property had county water, which would allow them to go to 1 acre lots, and we would get a non-landscaped box. And it met zoning. So what did we do? In order to discourage that, we said, okay, if you're going to build as a matter of right in that zoning residential subdivision class zoning district, you've got to go to a house on 2 acres. But if you want to go to 1 acre lots, then you've got to come in and meet these criteria for the types of subdivisions that we are allowed. That's where you hear things like country club. Okay, the type of subdivision. That was done in order to force people to come in and give us better style and better quality of houses. And we've got to be able to carry that through. The most amusing one that I've heard recently was the developer from out of town who suggested that he could come in and put apartments in East Griffin, and he would do them in brick to remind us of our mill heritage. Do y'all remember him?
The guy from Chicago?
Yeah, the guy from Chicago.
Yeah.
And it would look like it was going to be a Chicago tenement.
Yeah.
Again, trying to sell us that this was going to be some historic, architecturally significant design that looked, in my opinion, worse than the old Meriwether Street Homes property. And he expected us to buy into that, and that's what we would have gotten had it been approved. So, that to me is the first step. Enforce what we have, and let people in the county know that it's time to comply with the code and get the trash out and clean the place up. Now, that said, don't come look in my yard because I'm in the city of Griffin. Whew, excuse me. Nobody's ever going to accuse me of winning the Yard of the Month award. But nonetheless, nobody has convulsed violently as they've driven by my house. So, at any rate, that's where I would start as a matter of policy. The second thing really doesn't have a lot to do with zoning and development, but in order to raise the bar to make us more attractive to people who are coming in, I would say focus on the quality of our services. And in the past meetings when I've been here at your regular meetings, TJ and Kelly always are standing up here to get awards from the state because we've got a quality recreation and leisure services department. And I believe the fire and EMS folks got one a couple of meetings ago. I think that is something that raises the bar. The third is economic development, focusing on economic development, particularly with the asset that we have dealing along the Bolton Parkway. We have in contrast to Henry County, and I'm not picking on them, but in contrast to Henry County, I cannot imagine having to deal with a piece of property where I worked and had to have transit in and out from the mass of development of warehousing going up and down Highway 23 from McDonough to Locust Grove. We have been able to isolate a corridor, a 10-mile corridor from the city of Griffin to I-75 and designate that exactly for industrial/commercial development purposes, which are intended to bring better industries here.
Yep.
And I hate to tell the city of Griffin this, but they need y'all to develop that. But we also need the city of Griffin to have a vibrant downtown where there are places for people to go and things for them to do to make the community attractive from a social perspective. And the other thing with that is our comprehensive plan, in my opinion, Sylvia may have more experience with this than I do, but our comprehensive plan makes the most sense of any of the ones that I encounter that I've seen, because we plainly target AKB as the basis for the primary focus of industrial development, and we have the beauty of a greenfield development area that will hopefully, as long as the board follows that plan, will not look like 1941. No, in 1950, 1941 was a great road. But times change. And because also in the quadrant where Sun City is, we have targeted infrastructure and services And that is the area where density is going to be greatest because of those services being there. Whereas you have a very pristine and rural area that I think is very attractive as you go out toward Lion Creek and West Ellis and Rover Zatella, where we will never have that infrastructure. So economic development is significant. Now, we can always improve the development criteria that we have. But as I said in the presentation a couple of weeks ago, we have learned that square footage does not make for a quality development. And people who are absolutely afraid of density do not realize how open-ended large tracts and big houses can be if they are not a quality development to go with the size. So I would put, in terms of priority, I would actually put, and I know we've got a lot of work going on with regard to zoning ordinance and text amendments and so forth. The requirement of a pediment over a door case is not going to raise our bar. It's just going to mean we get the same type of house with a little doodad on top of the door. At least in Uncle Nudie's opinion, okay? And we have to have continuity in that development office. And my gut feeling tells me we're going to be okay now.
Keep coming back.
All right. So that's where I would start, and I would put it in that order of priority, because the easiest thing we can do is force people to respect the requirements that we've got in the code now and compel them to comply with it. And when we do that, as we continue to make the effort to improve these other things, we have credibility that we will stand behind what we've said people need to do in order to have a decent community in a decent area. Okay? And I need
May I
to,
add to that?
Yes.
let me send a text right quick, because I just realized I've got to move a conference call, so.
So, and I appreciate what Newton says, and I'm sure you all agree. This is the kind of institutional knowledge, and I know we have several employees that have just, you will never replace it when it walks out, obviously. I'm new. I'm the new kid on the block, but I come with 20 years of experience in zoning. So one thing that you have to understand about zoning is it's so complicated, and it's very layered, and it's conditional on so many things. And I don't care if you spend $1 million getting some hotshot attorney or firm to rewrite your zoning, tomorrow somebody may come in and ask you a question that you didn't consider. Because the creativity, the nuances, the individuality of every stanza in your zoning is as multiple as there are people on the planet. You just can't possibly guess at what somebody's going to want to do. So first of all, my ask is that don't have an expectation that your zoning code will always answer every question it won't. But you should be able to communicate sweeping themes and expectations and desires. And that's obviously your charge as a Board of Commissioner, that you do through and with your Planning Commission, your Variance Board, and then, of course, the document itself. So, but I think that one of the things I like to talk about a lot is courageous leadership. And I'm telling you, if you have somebody that knows that all they have to do is call somebody and it'll circumvent the rules, then that you've got a problem. Because what you have is not just the code enforcement officer and the people knowing that there's nobody there to enforce it, it's a staff that wonders if they're going to get the support they need politically to enforce the decisions that the political people put on the plate, right? And so it's kind of, it can be very intimidating to try and navigate a system that's constantly on, well, it's not on stable ground, if you will. So Newton's correct. It's not just enforcing what we have, it's when you find violations, understanding that there are penalties. And you've got people out there that are building buildings, and I mean like buildings and buildings and more buildings, and fences and encroaching on other people's property. And I wonder, do we have the fortitude to penalize them? And your code actually says it's $1,000 a day. Well, I'll be honest with you, I can't imagine any board ready to do that if they've been lacking compliance for, say, 365 days. You're going to charge them $1,000 a day? Probably not.
And no elected judge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. So it's just, and again, understand, this is not unique to Spalding County. These are the challenges. This is, nobody's saying, hey, Spalding is so far behind the ball, because it's so complicated and it just, every day it changes. So it's just giving us the latitude, us, meaning us, the collective us, to understand that there's no easy answer. But the one thing I will ask from the Board of Commissioners is, when someone calls, assume we're right first. Instead of assuming they're right and then calling to find out what we did wrong, do it the other way. Because, and we may find out from time to time that we've made a misstep, or that we misunderstood, or we may have interpreted it outside of step. But that should be what comes next. Right. The first position we should always take, in my opinion, is that we assume that the staff did what they were supposed to do, especially in an environment where we're challenged with compensation. We don't want to put that on top of, it just adds to the stress of, not only am I stressed out about this, but nobody believes that we did it right.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that courage among us all, whether it's me talking to my staff, or, Steve talking to me, or you talking to him. Let's assume that we did it right to begin with. And then let somebody prove that maybe we made a mistake, and that's okay. But like one example I'll give, because there will be lots, because a zoning code is a lot of pages and a lot of information, is I don't know if you realize, and why would you unless somebody's reminded you recently, there are no regulations on how many accessory structures somebody can build. Okay, so I have 20 acres and one house. I can build 30 accessory structures. We don't have anything when I found that out, I was like, that can't be right. But it is. But why would you even think about that until the applications start rolling in to address it? So, and then another one is, in some of our zoning, we have no lot size requirements. That surprised me. So you've got a county that is on that doorstep of becoming whatever it's going to be next, when it's forever been rural. So you really sort of have to make that conscious decision. Do you want it to stay rural, or are you ready to be whatever it is next? Urbanized, suburban, which is my coined term. You'll want corridors that may be more commercial than others. But you've got these enormous tracts of agriculture and residential property that are not owned by people who want to farm. They don't want to have one house on 20 acres. They want to make the money. And so, well, of course, what they want is the highest return on their investment will be industrial. Now, fortunately, in some cases, we think differently about it, but infrastructure will help us, because there is no water and sewer in some places. So you accidentally curb your appetite for that kind of development. But let's just say you had sewer everywhere. What would you want it to be, or the ability to put sewer in quickly everywhere? So one of the conversations that we'll have to have is, how responsive can we be? So remember, if somebody comes in and puts in an application and we want to stop them, we can't. Once they've started that, you have to give them whatever the current code allows. You can't say, ooh, let's have an emergency meeting and change the rules. But you can say, this is teaching us what we don't want to happen again. Let's get some parameters in place so the next applicant can't also get it. Because again, make no mistake, and I think that's been somewhat misunderstood, at least internal to the department, is we don't want that, let's stop it. No, it's too late for that. So, which is why these conversations will be so critical.
Unless you're in unincorporated Henry County.
But anyway, yes, but, and so it's understanding how it plays out as a process and what our obligations are. And then even when people, we have some triggers in the code that may say, 12 months, nothing's happened, so we can do X, Y, and Z. But if they've made what we call vested rights, which means they've invested in some way, and they've started a process, you're out of luck for that parcel. So let's instead quit focusing on that, because we've lost that battle already. Let's, again, like I say, decide what you want to see in every other situation. Because one of the things I try to encourage people, imagine you're a city or a county that's totally built out and doesn't have these acre and acres that are ripe for development. So if you say yes to this one thing, imagine that one thing is on every parcel on that street. So in other words, you may say to yourself, I mean, it's just one, I mean, how bad could it be? Well, then if every single parcel became that thing, are you okay with it? Because if you're not, then that's what you have to figure out how to regulate. Because once you've said yes, and it's all still zoned the same, and it's not in an overlay with other parameters, you can't say no the next time. And so, that's really, raising the bar will never be a conversation that you can capture in one conversation. But you do have to figure out how to set some parameters in place. And I mean, we have a lot of exceptional uses that I wonder if y'all know are even there. And I don't mean, y'all can't possibly know the zoning code by heart. I mean, Newton probably still has to look
I
it up,
don't.
and he
You
wrote
have
the
to look it
daggum
up.
thing. I mean, it's just too
No,
many
well,
years in the making.
Most of it was written before I was hired, but we
Okay.
changed. A lot of it's had to be changed for the reasons I said.
But you worked in it for
Yes,
decades,
I've worked
right?
in it forever.
So nobody is expecting the Board of Commissioners to know it by heart. I hope you never expect me to know it by heart. I should always say,
There.
let me look that up. Unless I just happened to look at it yesterday, I should never tell you from memory, because that's where we make mistakes that we didn't mean to make. So,
We are always surprised. There can be some obscure provision that allows this or denies that. And you kind of go, where did that come from?
yeah.
And you have to refresh your memory and then go back. And there have been plenty of times when I've retrieved a lot of files from closed storage.
And that, I don't think that's avoidable, and I'm not sure
It's
that's the
not,
point, right? But it's everybody understanding just how complicated the process is. And, I'll want to get to know the Board of Commissioners and Steve more as time goes by, because sometimes there are nuances and gray areas that I need to be clear on which way to steer it, if I have that authority to do so. And it should never be the world according to Sylvia, because I'm just an instrument to the Board of Commissioners and to Steve. I'm not a decision maker. I will have certain authorities that are prescribed by code that I need to have, otherwise we'll never get anything done. But I'm not the visionary for the county. I may participate in the conversation. You may want my input because I'm fabulous. I'm just kidding. But my point is that you are the legislative decision makers. Of course, you know that. But once you decide, then my path should be clear.
Correct.
I shouldn't have to wonder, who's going to call me and say, I don't want that this time.
Which is the reason why you just can't say, raise the bar.
Yep.
Because if raise the bar has no meaning or parameters, y'all don't know what to do. And on office continuity and personnel continuity, let me use the accessory use issue to show you how that's played out. When the issue on accessory uses was identified, Deborah Bell was here. And we drafted an ordinance to limit accessory uses, which will now finally come to you. Isn't it on the next agenda? Isn't this the accessory use ordinance that's on the next agenda?
I don't know, because of that change we made.
Okay, but anyway,
Because in
it's-
the new zoning ordinance, there is a lot about accessory units and up to 3.
Yeah, but remember, you talking about the draft? This is not what we work by until
Okay.
y'all approve it. Yeah.
It's what you have now.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
The ordinance falls through the crack and gets lost through a succession of 5 more department directors. So it's coming to you now, 4 years after we drafted it.
So that's William Wilson's, his phrase, raising the bar. And I don't think it's a bad thing. What was that?
No, no.
It's Commissioner Dutton's phrase.
Commissioner Dutton, it was the one I first heard say it.
No, William Wilson is the person that coined that phrase for us. However, and that was in reference to how we built the senior center. It was like, okay, do we put aluminum chairs in here, or do we put comfortable chairs? You're gonna have to pay for them one way or the other. And so we started doing that with every project we were doing, and we've done that really well, I think, in recreation. But that is pretty much the only place that we've done it. One of the biggest issues that I've had over the last 3 years in talking about not raising the bar or raising the bar for zoning is that our past, the most recent, or the last 3 or 4 planning and development folks that we had were working for the applicant rather than working for the board, not following what it is that we have said. They were trying to figure out how to let them go around what it was that we had as a rule. Clearly, not having code enforcement is huge. I mean, as a commissioner, I will ride by and say, oh, those are the mattresses there. Oh, I ain't got nobody I can call. And I'm sure citizens are the same way, because if you know there's no one to call, or if you call and someone answers, there's no one to come out and do anything about it. So, without a doubt, until we can get code enforcement working, until we can get an inspector, I don't know how many years it's been since we have been fully filled with employees. I think when I first got here, it was Chuck and another guy, and then you had a GIS person, then you had inspectors. So we don't have any of those people.
But I invite you to remember, it's, if you so approve it, I can write citations. Anybody can write citations as long as y'all vote for it. So a code enforcement officer in 200 square miles is one code enforcement officer. But right now, we can send them letters that says, hey, you're not in compliance, but we can't write citations unless we have a code enforcement officer. But if you approve it, you could literally say that every single member of your staff could write a citation. I'm not saying that's a reasonable response. I'm just saying that's your authority. You get to decide. And so I would say, so at the very least, you want the Community Development Authority department, the administrator, which is me, or a designee to write citations. And maybe you want to extend that. And it doesn't mean they're required to. It means they have the authority to if the situation arises. But right now, there's no clarity in the code about who can write a citation other than the building official on certain circumstances and the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, I definitely think that is certainly one thing that we really need to look at. We had a list of 3 things that were top priority for us: code enforcement, animal control, and something else. Maybe that got fixed. No, assistant county manager.
If you have the code provision, but there's no mechanism or personnel to enforce it,
Yeah,
and people don't believe they've got to comply with it, then it's,
yeah. I mean, I get why people are continuing to do this stuff. It's because there's nobody who will call them to account for it.
I'd like to, this was just a discussion, just get our minds working towards what do we want to do to raise the bar, and I wanted to take advantage of, while it was still fresh on our mind with Newton, to be able to do that, and thank you, ma'am, for coming in. All right, can we move on now, and we all start thinking? Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Time
thanks.
to move on.
thanks, Commissioners.
Item number 4, discussion from Parks and Leisure Services Advisory Board that United Pool Management be responsible for setting aquatic center fees. Ms. Carmichael.
Good afternoon, happy to be here. I'll try to be as brief and concise as I can be. And as you can see, there are 2 aquatic center items on the agenda, so that means we're getting closer, ladies and gentlemen. We have taken the fee schedule before the Parks and Leisure Advisory Commission, and they made a recommendation to you all that United Pools be responsible for setting and managing the fee schedule for these uses and programs, et cetera, of the aquatic center. You can see that they're proposing this is actually based on a 7-day-a-week operation, Monday through Friday hours, Saturday and Sunday hours. There's a daily admission fee, and then there's also, considering that there will be family uses, they're proposing having a primary account holder fee, and then any additional member will be one flat fee, regardless of their age. They also are proposing class fees, swim lesson fees, private lesson fees, etc. The reason, some of the things that are being considered, they provided a market study to the community that ran from January through March 6th. They conducted the market study through social media and shared on all county media platforms. They had 586 responses, and that included responses from all over the county, Griffin Spalding Schools, Senior Center, Wellstar, swim teams, etc. The purpose of the market study was to gain a greater understanding of the community that they will be serving, and what the community's expectation is for services, including classes, programming, costs, what the options will be, and what the availability will be. When setting fees, they are taking the following matters into consideration. They're looking at survey responses related to how individuals and families will use the facility, their own best practices. They have many years of experience as a management company from across the nation. They understand operational costs. They understand program fees and the comparison of other facilities that are like this facility. One of the things that they experienced with our facility is there's no other place like this place exactly. So it is a beautiful facility. If you've not had a chance to walk through there, please give me a call. I would love to take you through there.
I've not done it yet.
Oh, please, Rita.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah, love to take you through there. They are also considering the socioeconomic status of Spalding County residents, and they are considering operational costs. This will be, there will be multiple costs to operate the facility, from chemicals and staffing, and this is a round 7-day-a-week operation. So they are also looking at longevity and sustainability of this facility. So they believe these fees are equitable, they are reasonable with regards to the facility that they will be operating. So the recommendation from the Advisory Commission is to allow United Pools to set the fee schedule and continue to do so as they move into operations and manage the growth that will come.
You through?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's, Great County Manager. We're allowing them to set the fees. Is that offset for us paying the service?
There's a portion of it that is offset.
There's a
for
portion,
our
yes.
service, yes, sir.
What they call the gate, which is the one-day passes, there's a 70-30 split on classes, those kinds of things, we will have a shared revenue.
You've been involved deeply with this, Gwen.
Yeah,
That's-
it unnerves me a little bit because We have not had a pool in this community since the city closed their pool down. And even when we had the pool, the county paid money to the city of Griffin every year so that children would be able to swim, the first 100 kids would be able to swim at no cost to get in. So those demographics have not changed. You know, I would never walk all the way out to where the aquatic center is. And so, first of all, we've built it in a place where a lot of our citizenry can't even get to it.
True.
It's not like we have transportation to allow them to get there, so they gotta pay to get there. And then, I mean, you know, if you got 4 kids and you want them to go swimming one day, that's $30-40.
And look, and what about concessions? I mean, it costs to eat, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, that's not cheap.
The concession area is vending only. There's not a concession stand built into the building, because I don't know of any aquatic facility that
Okay.
allows food and beverage inside of the swimming areas.
Okay.
So when you go into our facility, you'll see that there's space for vending, and that's it.
I'm just awful concerned about the amount of money we're talking about for the majority of the people that we want to go to
To
the pool.
swim.
You know,
And seniors, everybody is mostly on a fixed income, but a lot of our members at the senior center are way below the poverty level in the amount of money that they make monthly. And many of them have the opportunity to utilize silver sneakers to cover that, but there is no mention of that. And why would we have a facility where we allow it at other places where seniors are, but they don't get any play when it comes to here, so.
So those services those are additional contracts that United Pools would have to pursue. So, you know, we can connect them with Silver Sneakers, Tivity, Active and Fit.
Well,
So
that's
those
what I'm
things
saying.
are,
I need
this is
to-
introductory.
Well, I understand that, but from the first day, people at the senior center want to get in the pool. I mean, and I'm not trying to push this off, but I'm simply saying we need to talk about the real numbers, the real cost, the people who've fallen through the cracks, who don't have $650 or even $65 a month to go and do whatever. So yeah.
May I jump in before you? I know, and this is not kind of going backwards here, but just making a statement here, that the Board of Education really wanted to have a partnership with us if we were to have it at Wynomie-Tyus, because I know that they wanted to have a stake in there if we were to have the location there. And that didn't happen, for many reasons. You know, I'm not so sure that we still should not reach out to them to see, you know, what kind of partnership maybe they would offer us to maybe would offset some of, you know, the cost for the kids. That I may include transportation, but I'm just saying cost for the kids. I mean, I wonder if, you know, what that would look like, Steve, if we were to reach out to them, you know. And I would think if I'm on the Board of Education and if I'm, you know, superintendent, I think I would jump at the opportunity, you know, when dealing with the kids and having opportunities for them. I don't know if we've done that. Again, since we didn't have it at the location they wanted, you know, if it's too late to do that now, no, we're talking about opening.
Yes, ma'am, we've made an initial request, but I very much appreciate what you're saying, because I think that's a great idea for us to go back to the school board and ask them specifically to partner with us to open up our aquatic center for our youth. I mean, there are, 9,000
Right.
plus kids in school system across Griffin, Spalding County. There's a great opportunity for us to partner together in bringing that aquatic center on board.
Because this is not about it's not the location piece anymore. It's not the building of the center anymore. You know, this is about taking care of making sure the kids can swim at an affordable rate.
Right.
If any. And they may decide to do that, if
You're-
that's the
So,
topic.
You're
so what
exactly
they
right.
talked, what the school system initially talked about was providing all of the racing, whatever, and I'm assuming that's already been set up.
Everything's in place. The building
Okay,
is.
so they were going to provide all the clock and the stands
they're
and the
doing that.
diving, but they've basically been out of the picture for that. So if they were going to spend that $80,000, maybe they're willing to parlay that so that there might be a better student rate.
I think that's
you know, for the community in general, but, my concern is the people who will probably be using this on a daily basis are the seniors. I don't see anything in here that really talks about, we know there's a swim team at Griffin, we know there's a swim team at Spalding, we know that there's the Gators, so how is that addressed? I don't
I can
see-
address those. Those will
Okay.
be done on an individual basis contractually, rather than featuring a lane rental, a complicated lane rental. There still has to be schedules worked out with these teams. The teams, they've already met. They're working on those conversations. The AD has been involved, and the Gators have also talked with United Pools. So those contracts have to yet still be worked out, and a
Well,
lot of conversations
I think
yet
it's
to be
important for us to know
had.
that.
Yes.
You
But
know,
that
I'm
would
not
be
trying to slow
between-
anything down, but I mean, I want to know all the numbers. I'd like to know if the school system is willing to parlay that money into something, and maybe we may be able to match it or whatever, but, you know, we sold this to people where their children and our children would be able to have access to recreation. You know, not that they needed to get a job before they could do it. And that our seniors would have access to this as well. And, you know, we've got seniors down there that have a hard time paying $5 a week to go on their trip that they trying to pay for by the end of this year. So but if we don't address this now, we're gonna be looking even more stupid than we're already looking.
But let me ask, okay, so since we know that we probably do need to seek the school system, what would it take to draft a letter of us asking for those? And we could probably get an answer probably quickly.
Yep, with the direction of the board, I'll be more than happy to draft the letter tomorrow and
Yes.
send it to the school superintendent.
And I wouldn't put a dollar amount on it, I'd let them tell us how much they were able to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
You
but,
know.
but, I mean, they're clearly were willing to
Yeah.
have some engagement. But then on the other hand, what does that mean in real life? Does that mean that when Spalding gets to practice, you can let them practice however many hours a week at a discount or at no cost? We're not really knowing what that is. We have these breaks, like the kids are off on break right now. They won't be able to afford to go, or somebody won't be able to afford to send their 2 kids to swim classes on a time that they're out of school like this, or you guys even be able to utilize it because it costs so much. So I'm saying all that to suggest to them, we have all of these industries, you have the school system.
Not
If
just the
we're-
school system, there are
Right.
lots of other
If
partners.
Their start.
if they are able to leverage
start.
those relationships, then it should be able to drive the overall cost of individuals having to be able to use.
Very easy, we see it at ballparks, you know, this is such and such's day. And they have subsidized that day down from $8 down to $2. And they get to put their banner up on that day, or those 3 days, or something like that. So it's not just the school system. I think there are a number of ways we can do this to be able to do something.
And I know that they're new here, but I really just feel like not saying that they shouldn't be coming to these decisions, but I think that this decision has been made without looking at all the potentials for how the money, I know they're trying to make money, but we're trying to make sure our people have access in a meaningful way.
I want to clarify that they are very open to our insertion into this to lower local rates. They are not coming in saying,
Sure.
this is what you have to do.
Right.
Because they know on the budget, and this will come out of the operational cost.
Yeah.
That operational cost will stay the same. So it would really be up to you all if you would like to reduce those rates. I'll follow your directive.
Well, I don't
We
think
don't-
that we
we
have
don't know
enough
enough to do that
information
yet.
yeah, I don't think we have enough information to do that. But I would definitely love to know where the school system stands on this. If I have to go to the city of Griffin and say, hey, what can you do to help families and children and old people who can't afford this? What can we do together? I just think once we set this, I think at least locked in, we're at least locked in, and anything that happens after that is not gonna supersede this.
Yes.
So,
I
yeah.
agree. All right.
So the direction is Steve right now.
Yes, the direction
Steve
is
to
to
contact the
Steve.
school
Yes.
system.
And any other partners that we can turn around and.
But we need to establish those
And-
partners, but right now, we need a letter from the Board of Education, because they're talking about it opening soon. Let's not, we talked about sponsorships, but we can talk about that, but we need somebody right now.
I agree. We can get to the chamber and ask the chamber to be able to get out to their partners to be able to do that in just one other way.
And I would like for you to ask them, what kind of relationship have they made with industry? We've got Caterpillar, Big Caterpillar, Little Caterpillar, Hoshizaki.
They're well open.
RMS.
They're very open to all of that. They've been at after business meetings. They've been at the many community events, the hiring fairs at Spalding and Griffin.
This is United Pools.
United Pools, yes, they're here.
So-
They're
so
here and
that's great,
working.
But we want them
And
to
the Lakes of Green
dig a
Valley,
little
you know,
deeper.
it's right there with them.
Yeah.
And so, all right.
I've got my marching orders. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Item number 5.
Thank you.
So
Discuss-
will we table this tonight?
I think so.
Yeah, because we're not making a decision, we're getting more information.
What's the, okay, so the,
Okay.
Item number 5.
Sorry.
Discuss opening date of the Aquatic Center from Parks and Leisure Services Advisory Commission. Ms. Carmichael.
Okay, the Parks and Leisure Advisory Commission met on March 14th, and at that time, it was expected for us to have the CO by mid-April of this year. United Pools will also need up to 3 weeks at a minimum to set up and training once we have the CO. So with that frame of mind, the Advisory Commission recommended May 1st as the date of opening, and it passed unanimously. On March 27, during our pre-operational meeting with United Pools, they confirmed they would need no less than 3 weeks of in-facility pre-operational training before May 1st. The CO is still pending due to as-bills. We may need to schedule the grand opening for in June. The contributing considerations are United Pools recommends an opening after June 1st. May 1st is their heaviest load of opening pools. What that does is it gives them a very thin layer of people who need to be involved in that open day, first impression of this fantastic facility. We want to roll out exceptionally well. Some of the lifeguards have been certified. The lifeguards are having to travel to be certified, and some of our local youth cannot travel the distance to get to the facility where they're required to do in-water training. So some of them are waiting for us to have the CO so they can go in and begin certifying youth. Now, as you look at the month of May, half of the month of May is graduations, high level of activities. They're not going to be able to accomplish very many certifications if we're in the pool by May 1st. So they're recommending that the grand opening be after June 1st to allow time from when the CO is issued to go in, finish certifying and training all the lifeguards, meeting with multiple user groups to establish contracts and schedules, to do marketing, promotional, and guest services training. We don't want to do that in a rush. We want to make sure this is timed and a lot of thought goes in, so we're well prepared for grand opening. So what they call their time in the facility before grand opening is a soft opening. It gives us time to get the Griffin Gators in there swimming, gives the lifeguards practical experience in that facility. It just creates for a much smoother opening.
Okay.
so is that the opening day, June 1st? You said after June
After.
1st. So there's.
Because we don't even have the CO, so based on when we get the CO, that
there's-
opening date will be flexible.
Okay.
And I would ask that you give us that flexibility to,
Oh, June 1st, I think June 1st is a Saturday.
It's
It's
on
a
there.
nice day to open things where everybody can come and see it.
I can't guarantee it can be on that date because we don't have the CO. Without the CO, we don't know that we have enough weeks to get all those
Okay,
staff
so
in and certified.
You're not looking for a date today.
I'm looking for a recommendation that it be after June 1st and that you allow us the flexibility to work with that based on this date we get the CO.
All right, so your purpose in coming here tonight was what?
The initial request was from Plaque, but from the time we loaded that up in Granicus, everything has been uploaded and saved. We just had a meeting with United Pools. So just timing everything correctly. So the actual motion, the recommendation has changed.
So it could be August, could be September,
I hope not.
but you're not.
But, so that's not a thing right now. You don't need us to say anything about a date.
I don't know where where we are with this, with the as-bills.
So maybe once you
Yes,
get
come
the
back.
CO, then we can make a decision.
Yes.
Or when you know you're having the CO, because until they get the CO, they can't even really get in and do what they're doing.
Right, as soon as we have the CO, we're going in, we're moving in the rest of the way, and they're in operating and warming up the facility, having a soft opening, basically.
Nothing to do here. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about summertime, I'm thinking about kids, I'm thinking Memorial Weekend, you know, I'm thinking, but I know it has nothing to do, I'm just saying the timing would be, I'm
The
thinking, wow.
timing, it's
Yeah.
just, the push in this project
But-
is,
But you want to do it right, I get it.
We
I
gotta
mean,
do it
I
right.
understand that, but I'm just thinking if I'm a kid,
Well-
you know, and I'm getting to school, you think I'm like, anyway,
All right.
I'm just saying
All right, we
Memorial
got
Weekend
that.
is for
Item number
for
6,
summer.
discussion from Plaque on the Parks and Leisure Services Master Plan. Ms. Conley.
This one right here? Okay, so, since we've received the bids for the comprehensive master plan for Parks and Leisure Services, we had interview panels, we've had scoring using rubrics to make sure everyone was scored and evaluated carefully, and they are making a recommendation to you all. But I did want to share with you, we've created a very robust RFP, and I want to outline briefly with you what we were asking for. We were asking for a detailed, do you want me to read all of these in this workshop? I don't know if you've had a chance to review it.
I looked at
I've
it.
read them.
Pardon me?
I've read them.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can tell we had a very robust ask from our bidders to include deferred maintenance, to include growth, to include 5 and 10-year capital improvements, including staffing recommendations, sustainability, et cetera. We asked for meetings with the stakeholders. We want robust citizen engagement. That is primary for us. We want to hear from the community to know what they need through Parks and Leisure Services. We also want their plan development, conceptual plans of recommended projects, assess all current trail, greenway plans. I'm just kind of overviewing that. We had multiple firms attend the pre-bid meeting. We had great response to our RFP. We had an excellent showing of bidding companies. Some of them are familiar to you, I'm sure. We had a very diverse interview committee, including advisory commission members and staff. We interviewed the top 3 recommended companies, Barge, Barry Dunn, and CPL. And it was a unanimous decision to recommend CPL due to their years of service, their history of park and recreation projects within the last 10 years, their collaborative multilingual team, their approach to reaching the community, including going into the schools and working with 4th and 10th graders. They are completely certified, licensed. They are one complete team. They were not outsourcing any of their services. And this is their billing outline. And this funding is, for this project, is in impact fees to fund this recommendation.
Good.
Okay.
One thing I particularly liked is they, rather than just benchmarking us solely to NRPA standards, they're going to create a Spalding County standard, and then they're also providing us with working tools. After they're done, we'll have tools to keep in place that we will use year again. And they were the most responsive to our robust RFP. I also liked the financial sustainability piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Ledbetter, anything on this? Any comments?
No, I was very pleased with how the team worked together and scored out each of those who were interviewed. I thought there was good discussion, there was good questions for each of those who came for the interview. We didn't hold back. We pressured on them and made sure that they were going to deliver what we had asked for.
Absolutely.
So kudos to the team for putting this together.
Gwen?
No. I sent them an email to ask them, were they going to discuss this? And I think that they did with the rest of the Leisure Services Board, but I have a lot of confidence in the people that Kelly and those that, I'm sure Peter Phelps asked them every question in the world.
Absolutely
So I feel like,
They're very, very tough questions, and
Yeah.
some didn't even,
so if
couldn't answer.
that's who they unanimously came up with, I'm thinking they must be good.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
All right.
So that
Thank
will
you,
be
Kelly.
on for
Thank
tonight,
you.
right?
All right. We don't have an executive session at all?
May I clarify? Okay, I want to make sure, I'm showing 2 items on here that may be tabled. So can we kind of confirm that? That would be item 2, which we just talked about, the aquatic center fees. Are we tabling that? Are we going to go ahead and approve it? We're going to table that, right?
Table.
And then item 4, which is the 911 radio system upgrades. Did we say we were going to table that one as well?
That is correct.
Okay, but everything else is a go for a vote.
Now, recommended date of Aquatic Center 3.
What now? Oh, the opening?
Yeah, the opening date is also gonna be tabled.
So the 911 was I don't see that as a table, I see
No.
that as a request from the BOC to ask staff to go RFP
Okay.
that
So
particular
that's not a
item.
table.
Great catch. Thank
Okay,
you.
and item 3, Gwen, we're not changing the opening date, because they said after, oh, no, you did say,
She doesn't know yet, and since
Okay,
she
so are
doesn't
we
know
tabling
about
that
the
one?
CO, we're just
Okay.
gonna wait until
All right.
they have a better idea.
so it's actually item 2 and item 3 that we're tabling.
No, 2, 3, and 4.
That he just said, no, we're not tabling 4.
We're gonna tell him direction.
We're just gonna tell him to
Right.
to
We're
try
not
to see
tabling
about
that.
finding out. for Peter.
Okay, so it's 2 and 3 we're tabling, items
Correct.
2 and 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Would the board afford us the opportunity to share with you one more item this evening during the workshop that we've learned about just in the last few days concerning resurfacing?
Sure.
Right?
Can we take a 5-minute break first and go to the
Make
bathroom?
I make a motion to amend our workshop agenda to consider, I'm looking at something. else.
Resurfacing.
To have discussion or action, discussion about resurfacing.
Did you say second?
second.
All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 3-0.
Until he takes a recess, because otherwise we don't have a quorum. So,
Do you want to take a 5-minute
would
recess?
you take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, 5-minute recess. I'm doing that same thing.
I prayed you back home.
I'm calling us back to order. All right, TJ?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. As you are aware, the state legislator has gone ahead and provided some additional LMIG money for all entities in the states. This is no match LMIG.
Now, hold on, let's make sure. This is a different name.
It is. It's,
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, okay.
It's
I wanna make
local.
sure that I-
Administered.
P.
That's okay.
Local administered projects. I'm sorry for resurfacing.
Okay.
I stand corrected. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure if there was two things,
No, sir.
two different issues.
They've afforded Spalding County 1.14 million and some change. This would be no match. Knowing that we had some extra funds, we've actually had Henry County open up a conversation with us, and we've opened up a conversation with the city of Griffin. We are looking at the possibility of splitting the cost of Hillview, which runs off of Rocky Creek. It's the very northern road in Spalding County. The north side of the yellow line is Henry. The south side of the yellow line is Spalding. They would pay half and we would pay half. And then we've opened up some conversations with the Public Works Director with City of Griffin and South Pine Hill, which runs between Popular and 362 Williamson Road. That road goes in and out of jurisdictions dozens of times, just depending on who you ask. The Public Works Director indicated to me that she would bring to her board to split the cost of that road as well. So this would be essentially 50% off for these two roads.
Where are those roads on the list now?
So
What year?
South Pine Hill is going to be next year, year 4. And then Hillview is not on this 5-year list. It is in fairly bad shape. It is a road that we get a lot of complaints about. We do a lot of work orders for potholes there.
Where is that?
Hillview is, go north of Sunnyside. It runs on the other side of railroad tracks off of Church and goes to Rocky Creek. It's the very last road north in Spalding County, Henry County line. You know where the trailer park is by the racetrack up on the north side? It's on the other side of the railroad tracks.
Boy, this is north,
Yes.
okay?
So Henry County has indicated that they would spend their funds there if we would split that cost with them. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what's logical, because I guess they could do their side of the road and we still have our side not done. So it seems like the most logical to cooperate, and then maybe in the future, that type of cooperation would go well too with the state.
And this is in additional monies for resurfacing. We will, or the state will, reopen the LMIG application up the first week of August. So we're not missing any funding coming in. This is in addition to the LMIG funds.
Okay, so this is my problem. I understand that it makes sense, just like it makes sense for the city of Griffin to connect their sidewalk to the other places. And I don't know, maybe you can tell me, how much money have y'all spent on Hillview in the last year, or the last 2 years?
I could have that for you, of course.
I just don't like the idea of putting in roads to have stuff done to it that is not on the list. And the reason I say that is because my roads are basically on the 5-year list, and I'm not for anybody going ahead of that.
That's the truth.
But I also understand that you can't resurface one side of the road. So I would like to feel justified in, if, you know, we spent $200,000, we spent $20,000, I don't know.
Right, it's going to be 20,000 or less.
So yeah, and I mean,
Maybe
is that
10,000
more
or less.
than High Falls Road? Is that more than Manley Road? You know, I don't know what that means
Right.
in terms of what a bad road.
It'll be
totals is.
similar to High Falls Road. That's a good example. And as you know, we did put out the RFP for the new road assessment last week. So we'll be opening those bids in 3 weeks. And that'll give us our new road assessment numbers for y'all to go by for possibly the next T-Splosh and/or as we continue LeMig. So we'll have a new list. I suspect a lot of the ratings will change drastically now that there is so much road that you've already resurfaced.
Well, what about those roads that are already on the list? Are they going to be reassessed again?
They technically will be, yes.
Well, I don't think.
But they're already, that's a good question. Technically, yes, because I think you're gonna, I guess we could take them off. I never thought of that. Excellent idea.
No, I'm.
We're not changing the T-Splosh. No matter
Right.
what they do with the thing, the
Now-
T-Splosh is gonna go with those roads that are on.
What I would say is this is a whole different, so our last road assessment was done by hand. You don't do it by hand anymore. You're gonna do it with LiDAR, you're gonna do it with cameras, you're gonna do it with GIS. So I would recommend that they stay on there because you're gonna get a picture of the entire road and you'll see other stuff like signs, manholes. We'll be able to see the existing condition and it'll tie directly into our new GIS system. So I would recommend that we would continue doing those roads.
See, this is one free money, but we could use that free money somewhere else. We could double it up, meaning because Henry County's gonna pay for half of the roads, we
Right.
could double the road, but we could put this 1.1 somewhere else inside the county.
I mean, I understand, and I get it. I don't think that they're just picking a specialty. But, I got my own thing about, I'm still talking about 9th Street. I haven't seen it masticed. I haven't seen it graded. So yeah, I have a problem with putting other roads ahead of something that I already should have been on the list. So, yeah, if you could just maybe ease my brain, about how much money we've actually spent. Not, you can tell me that's a little bit, Ms. Gwen, that's a lot, if you consider every road that we got or whatever. But yeah, I think it's money we wouldn't have had in the first place, and if you can do 2 roads, fine. I'm just,
No.
I'll be on my road to get
Yeah, and that's what we want you to do, to be cautious. Okay.
And actually, I love the idea that TJ brought with respect to assessing all of our roads, which includes the roads that we have just recently resurfaced. It's going to give us a full asset understanding of the road systems that we have here in Spalding County, and we can list them all in a priority list. And we will bring those back to you by district, so you can see the quality of the roads that you have in each of your districts, and afford us the opportunity to sit down for our next T-Splosh and decide which roads we will put in for consideration. I think this is a great idea for us to move forward.
That part is absolutely out of the park.
And we changed significantly the way we surfaced 2 years ago, our processes with the OGI. So having that information as well, some of those roads for 3 years prior to that were done in the old system. So it'll be very good to see that. The other thing that I like too about this concept is that other entities are reaching out to us, asking us to cooperate with them, for them to cooperate with us. So we're using their dollars as well.
Yes.
So
beneficial.
I'm big on
I'm
that.
excited
Trying
about
to get
that.
that cooperation going for let's start it here, we can pick it up into other places.
So we touch 9 counties, and Henry County is not the only, Hillview is not the only place we touch roads. We have multiple roads with them, so this would be excellent in the future as well.
So we're only gonna be doing that little curve?
No, ma'am. So that would be an extra part. Hillview actually technically ends at the curve, but you see the railroad tracks there? Essentially, if you're using Hillview Road, you're using those railroad tracks. So we'll bring the paving down to the railroad tracks. And those railroad tracks are directly above the racetrack, directly across from
Is
the,
that still a crossing?
yes, it's one of the ones that we kept open.
Okay.
We closed the one directly to the south by about 500 feet. So if you were coming off-
the left side of Hillview is Henry County, and the right side is us?
Yes. So
Okay.
the westbound lane is Henry, the eastbound lane is Spalding.
Okay. And so from the railroad crossing up to where in the, where will you do the resurfacing, and does it go all the way around?
So, are we recording?
I don't
Okay.
think-
Yes,
Um,
yes, we are.
Yes, so that little bit right there would technically be Spalding County part,
The red part?
the little blue hatched part.
Okay. But you're just saying you're gonna stop at the curb? You're not going?
No, we're gonna go to the railroad tracks. Because it only makes sense. The traffic on Hillview goes to the railroad tracks.
Right, I get that. I'm saying, where does it start? Does it start at
The
the,
north, you're talking about the north end.
see where the red arrow goes to Willow?
That's where it starts, that's
That's
where
what I'm trying to find
Hillview
out.
starts, is at the red. The little blue part is actually Church Street, right, guys? Is actually Church Street.
So that paving will go from the railroad crossing around the curve to the right to Willow something Road Drive.
Right, go to the line.
Okay,
Now, let me make sure I understand. We've got money coming from the new thing,
Right.
which is, and then we're going to get money later on from LMIG, but it's a 30%.
Correct.
Matching fund. So we're gonna get this 1.14 plus LMIG minus whatever the 30% is or whatever.
Well,
we have to do.
you'll get LMIG at about $900,000, and then the state requires that we contribute 30% to the LMIG, so it would be in addition to.
Okay, so, we're gonna get $2+ million worth of roads, plus we have to give some money. Okay. I'm
Right.
okay.
And then the Hillview portion's about 25% of Henry County's money. So that will directly assist our residents.
Well, okay, I'm good with all this. Thank you. This is good news. Good news on you putting out for redoing our roads. That's really, really good news. That's really almost better than this. That's gonna be, our next big step, I believe. When we start
Thank you.
pushing for
Thank
what
you.
are we gonna do in the future.
Appreciate it, TJ.
That's a biggie. Okay?
thank you, TJ.
I'm sorry?
I said, thank you, TJ.
Yes. All right, do I, anything else there?
No, sir.
Do I have motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. We're adjourned for a half hour.
Timing's good.
I'm gonna make